Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're all doing well, and welcome to this community showdown. It's going to be the Dwarves led by Hlydden facing off against the Wood Elves, who are going to be helmed by Menacing Platypus here on the Proving Ground. Should be quite a bit of fun, and yes, your eyes do not deceive you. That is indeed 5 Irondrake flamethrowers. So let's get this party started, have some fun, and see how this battle goes. So, for the Dwarfs in the forest, going for a total tavern bounty, it is going to be the PENTA Irondrake. Now, the Irondrake flamethrowers are very good against lightly armored targets, and that's most of the Wood Elf infantry roster and ranged roster, of course. But typically, these guys are going to be hitting melee units. But Blade Singers, War Dancers, Dryads, Eternal Guard, all of them will be melted pretty horribly by Irondrakes. But Irondrakes are also a little bit vulnerable at getting pounded by Wood Elf armor-piercing missiles, which is going to be Way Watchers, Starfire Shafts, things like that. They don't have any shields, and of course, are a little bit slow and cumbersome at 26 speed. So we'll have to see how that goes. And there's also going to be a Dwarf Hero Corps. So I actually really like cheap heroes in Domination mode. I feel like they're really resilient at fighting on objectives and just grinding things out. And Thades are pretty cost effective. I mean, 120 armor is great against the War Dancer kind of style meta. And on top of that, they have Silver Shields, 55 melee defense, and they pack a punch at 400 weapon strength as well. So there are 2 of those. Thoric Ironbrow is obviously the go-to. He's just insanely good. I really wish there would be like a kind of a pass on a lot of factions that just have like one hero or one lord, and that's the only one they use. Like at a competitive level, Thoric is just so superior to the other Dwarf Lords with the ability to obviously buff your entire army and basically provide you with a semblance of magic. It's just too good to pass up on if you're really actually trying to win. In the back, we got 2 Dwarf Warriors, and they're ready to party. Yeah, they got Silver Shields, okay stats. Dwarves have always, I think in the history of Total War, had a little bit of an advantage over Wood Elves. Now, super high-level Wood Elf players, someone like Platypus, or back in the day we would see Xiphos, they would find ways to obviously defeat the Dwarves, but I think the burden of like effort is really on the Wood Elves in this matchup. But in Domination, it's a little bit different. Obviously, if it's a very like big map, for example, and the Dwarves get spread out, the Wood Elves can kind of pick them apart and use their cheap cavalry, like Blade Riders, to cause havoc in backfields. But yeah, again, a lot of variables to consider. Some Rangers, or Quarrelers actually. Quarrelers are very good. I like them a lot. And typically they can endure Wood Elf missiles and trade pretty well. More Dwarf Warriors on the side. And now for the legendary Platypus here on the other side, it is going to be the Sisters of Twilight, which are great. They obviously have good sniping potential, so they can use their arrow to snipe the Dwarf Lord, someone like Thoric. And they got Breath Attacks, Armor-Piercing Dragon. It's a lot of great utility against Dwarves if you can avoid being sniped. Hawkeyes of Drakira, so it looks like Platy coming into a little bit of a ranged heavy build, so it's going to be Glade Guard Starfire Shafts, and more Fat Shafts with double Waywatcher creeping up. Now, the big thing, just like it was in Land Battle back in the day for the Wood Elves, is to make sure that your fire targets with your Waywatchers are cost effective. So you don't want to be wasting ammo into Dwarf Warriors, but more so shooting into their own missiles, going after, something like an Irondrake, for example, if they bring those, although Irondrake's weren't super common here. Hawkeyes of Drakira getting a little bit of DACA going into Thoric here. So Thoric getting popped in the face. You better be careful. I mean, even though he's pretty tanky, he does have close to 7,000 HP. Still can be focused down by elite armor-piercing archers like the Hawkeyes. A very, very strong unit for sure. Now, Sisters of Twilight got a little bit of damage on the Dwarf Warriors here. Looks like they're opting to use their ammunition on those units. On the far side of the battlefield, Platypus is going to be securing objective number 3 using some War Dancers. And the Wood Elves getting that nice kind of concave of archers here, ready to kind of pour into the Dwarf army. But the Dwarves will pretty much always fall behind in value by a lot in this matchup. It's more so the grind. Like, eventually the Wood Elves start to run out of ammo. Their more flimsy units start to kind of struggle a little bit. But initially, I've seen Wood Elves consistently go up over Dwarves like 1,500, 2,000 in value here. And then eventually the Dwarves will kind of claw their way back with just their tankiness and whatnot. So if you're a Dwarf player and you're in this position where you're just kind of getting poked like this, don't despair. It's all part of the game. So Thoric here getting pounded. I do like this focus fire from Platy. Platy sees an opportunity, and obviously if Hlydden doesn't respond to this, I mean, Thoric could straight up just go down after a couple more volleys. Thanes being sent forward. This is much like if you're playing Khorne, for example. Khorne players will use the double cultists with their silver shields to just kind of chase missile units and be disruptive. And it looks like the archers are going to be pulling back, not wanting to get caught in combat versus the Dwarvish Thanes, which are pretty disruptive. And now the archers, the Hawkeyes of Drakira, and the Glade Guard, going to be shooting into the Irondrakes and melting them pretty hard. So, I mean, yeah, brutal start. Like I said, 2,000 value lead here. And now the Dwarves are starting to return fire a little bit with the Quarrelers. And on the other side, we are going to be seeing Slayers coming in tandem with some Blasting Charges. So Blasting Charge miners are brutal in this matchup. Pretty much the entire Wood Elf melee roster is going to be countered by that. And here we do get the Chad Dwarven Thane jumping in. He's doing the Flying Dwarven Karate, one of the most forbidden techniques in the old world. Getting in there with his hammer and his beard and basically tanking this huge part of the army. Nice play there by Platy. Platy does use the old smoke bomb. It does have a little bit of a slowing effect here, putting him down to 13 speeds. Maybe the archers will be able to get away, but so far the Irondrakes are getting popped pretty good. One Irondrake is basically put in the trash can, and the other one here is going to be getting probably dunked on as well. But the funny thing about Irondrakes is, even if you only have like 10 models left or 8 models, they still do a hell of a lot of damage. It's pretty insane. So in the middle, the Dwarves have secured objective number 2 after the Wood Elves grabbed it initially. A little bit of a defensive concave here on objective 3, and Thoric looks like he's making his way back towards the objective. But it looks like we are going to get a fight here. War Dancers sandwiching in the Slayers, which is extremely cost ineffective for the Dwarves. Slayers, I mean, yeah, sure, they hit hard enough to do some damage, but the War Dancers are basically born and bred to just, take down lightly armored troops, and they have good enough combat stats that they can actually sustain versus tankier units as well. But I guess with their melee defense being lowered by the Shadows Coil, they'll last longer, but won't be able to cut through those Slayers as quickly. Now, Irondrake shooting into the trees a little bit. Oh, you gotta love it. Dude, it's so awesome. I love Irondrakes. But the trees do obstruct quite a bit of the damage, but it does force back the War Dancers, and it looks like the Thane is going to have an opportunity to fall back as well. Dwarves pressing up on this back objective too, and it looks like Platypus does respond with some Bladesingers, but the problem is Bladesinger is super expensive, right? And these miners with blasting charges will just trade so cost effectively if they get their blasting charges off. So if those Bladesingers decide to advance at any point, it's such a cost effective screen. The Dwarves basically spent 400 gold to push back like 1,000 gold. That's a pretty big win for the Dowie. But looking at the value, the Wood Elves are still getting that value done, but the resilience of the Dwarves in the middle is certainly paying dues, as the War Dancers here do start to get buckled a little bit. Thane still causing disruption, and overall the Dwarves are looking like they might get a triple cap here. Nice cost-effective volley here from the Irondrakes. Beautiful stuff. Wouldn't it be kind of cool in this game if like trees and different terrain features could be like lit on fire and have some sort of an effect? I know they've tried to do that in historical games, and maybe it's something that would just be clunky and probably implemented in a very haggard way. I always thought that'd be kind of cool if like somebody was like in multiplayer, maybe it's a power fantasy from the days of Warhammer 2 when people used to forest camp and land battle and just not come out and fight you. But like, yeah, like if only I could light those trees on fire and force them to come out. But anyways, here in the middle, it looks like this objective going back and forth. The Dwarves appear to have called in a cannon in the back, so the dreaded Dwarven Great Cannon is online, which is a good call. I actually think it's nice. You could just put constant pressure on the Sisters of Twilight and also a little bit of hurt down on the Wood Elf Archers in the backfield. And here we do see a bit of a push, and oh, what a beautiful Dwarven firing concave here. Oh my god, bathe in righteous Dowie fire. Those War Dancers getting cooked by those flamethrowers. And you see what I'm saying? Even in their tattered state, they still do very well. Hilden, a true Dowie lord here, moving up and getting those Irondrakes in position as the value does start to close a little bit, but still the Wood Elves do have a little bit of a lead. But remember, there's a lot of sunshine and rainbows, but when those Way Watchers start to run out of ammo, then the Dwarves are going to be having just, these tattered units everywhere that the Wood Elves do maybe struggle to finish off, right? Bladesingers, of course, on paper, if they can isolate Dwarven troops without blasting charges or being focus fired themselves, will do very well. And you can see, of course, they're going to be butchering through these chaff units quite effectively. But once again, we do get the Irondrakes. Only a couple models left, guys. Only 8 models, and look at the damage on those Bladesingers, getting absolutely crumped by those Irondrakes. Now, Sisters of Twilight look like they're going to be trying to get back in this game here. Moving in, the Dwarves do have a double cap right now. So sitting on objective 2 and objective 3, the Dowie are certainly cackling, and the Sisters take a pretty risky play here. There's a fair amount of archers nearby. Thoric does pop the Rune of Doom, giving the remnants of the Slayers, which I think are nearby. Yeah, a couple of Slayers here, only 4 of them. A little bit more stopping power, and honestly, Sisters going to be taking some big damage here. But one of the reasons why the Sisters of Twilight are so good is because they have this free regeneration ability. Let me go ahead and find it. Conjoin Destiny. So when they get below a certain HP threshold, which I believe is 20%, they just get a fat heal. It's pretty insane. It's like a flat heal of 25% of their HP. And it's, with good micro, it's pretty easy to consistently pull that off. So once again, we do see Bladesingers pushing across, able to secure objective 2, but the Dwarves on the other side didn't hear no bell as more blasting charges are moving up to take that objective. And once again, the Bladesingers just getting melted by the Quarrelers and the Irondrake remnants that were able to survive the missile fire. And a Rune of Wrath and Ruin going down as well, doing some substantial damage, guys. Christmas Cavalry being called in on the other side, and I don't hate Lost Sylvan Knights against Dwarves. They have good armor piercing, good physical resist, can certainly be very, very disruptive, but they're fighting just a huge uphill battle. Slayers or Dwarf Warriors, Thane, missiles right here with a little bit of Irondrake support behind them. It just seems like the Dwarves have more action here on the battlefield. That cannon fire is starting to do some good disruption against the Sisters of Twilight, and the Wood Elf infantry are just kind of like perpetually being mowed down. And that is kind of something you see with Wood Elves. You'll see like the initial vanguard will be the archers, where they will accrue a value lead. But then, the War Dancers and the Bladesingers will move in and kind of claim the objectives. But In this case, the Dwarves certainly don't fold easy. They're one of the best factions at taking a beating and still keeping it going here. So Christmas Cavalry doing good, though. Keeping a little bit of damage and disruption on Platy's forces, moving into the Dwarf Warriors, but the attrition is starting to add up here for sure, as there is a unit of Slayers on them now. Slayers will get their anti-large bonus, despite these Lost Sylvan Knights having a pretty good physical resist. It's only 55%. Back in Warhammer 2, the Lost Sylvan Knights, I believe, had less HP, but they had like 90% resist, so they were even more obnoxious back then. But in this case, I think they're a pretty well-balanced unit. Blade Singers moving into the middle. This could be a big one for Platy. Might be able to kind of scrap some value here, as they do get a nice engagement on one of the units that actually can take them down, which is the Irondrake Flamethrowers. But it just seems like there's such an unholy legion of Dwarves here. Like, Slayers have good DPS, and especially if they're flanking. 48, weapon strength against the Blade Singers. It's going to be a rear charge here. We got a Thane in there, and they might actually be able to wear down these Blade Singers. We'll have to see. Over on the second objective, we do see the Sisters of Twilight. Beautiful breath attack there by the Dragon. Glidden holding on to the far side objective. Looks like some Christmas Cavalry going to be coming in. Nice blasting charges by Glidden there, as it does make some okay contact. Looks like it didn't do as much as I thought it would, but nonetheless, maybe if they're sitting still a little bit more bunched up, we'll have to see how the blasting charges come into play. But the Christmas Cavalry are pretty disruptive, and you can see how quickly they do get through armor, but this blasting charge salvo should do a little bit more damage. Yeah, that was pretty cost effective against these very expensive cavalry units. Middle objective looks like it's pretty well controlled by the Dowie. Glidden did accidentally overchase with the Thane, which should be brought back to the middle. I would imagine it will be. And over on Objective 3, we see the Dwarf Warriors, and the Slayers just bumping and grinding and just dragging down these Blade Singers. But man, Blade Singers with 66 melee defense is so good. You'll notice how most top players, like Platypus being one of them, of course, does go up to the 67 melee defense here, opting to cut the melee attack, which is the right decision because they have a pretty good bonus versus infantry, which will compensate for the sacrifice of the melee attack. And just having that much melee defense is pretty insane. It makes them really resilient. Without that, they'd probably be like, at 30% right now, if not less. So good cycle charging here. It looks like there's going to be some witchcraft going down. Oh, big breath attack from the Sisters. Nice alpha strike here from the forces of the Wood Elves. A big damage on the Dwarf army. The Thane gets terror routed. Slayer's very beat up. Dwarf Warriors here holding. Look at the little Irondrakes here. These guys are absolute bosses. Getting one last volley before they go. More miners on the way in. Middle objective looks firmly controlled by the Dowie. And the Rune of Doom is active once again. Such a cost-effective ability, right? Just being able to buff the entire Dwarf army. It's affecting this fight here. It's affecting this fight. And on the far side, it's going to be affecting the miners with blasting charges. Suddenly they have 44 melee attack. It's like a Wa, basically. The Dwarves just got their own version of Wa, which is pretty insane. And certainly increased their DPS in that time. Now, we see the big finishers coming out, the Norgrimlings Ironbreakers. This is a unit that, if you want to really anchor down an objective, these are the boys you call. I don't know if you guys know the lore about the Irondrakes, or the Ironbreakers, but they're basically like trained to fight in like tunnels against like some of the scariest shit in the old world, and they have blasting charges, explosives. Nice salvo right there. And 79 melee defense is pretty serious. They're going to be moving up on the objective. And yes, there are some Way Watchers here, but the Norgrimlings Ironbreakers do have 125 armor in tandem with Silver Shield. So that's going to be giving them 55% resistance against the missiles coming in. And yeah, though it isn't the worst target for Platy, it's going to take a long time to clear him out. And time is not on the side of the Wood Elves. The Dwarves have had a pretty solid cap. We do see a very minor value lead for Platypus, only a couple hundred, but Platy also did get some healing too, so the value lead is probably a little bit more substantial. But, the Dwarves, they have high leadership, man. They fight to the last end. It looks like the Dwarves over here holding this objective. This is an MLG play by Glidden here, by the way. Very good stuff. Basically, moving the Dwarvish Thane on the objective is providing the Dwarves with 3 capture weight against a beat-up Blade Singer at half health, which probably has like 3.5 to 4 capture weight right now. So this is delaying, and in a very, point advantageous situation the Dwarves are in, that's a huge play, really delaying the objective. So if you guys are getting into domination mode, it's something you certainly want to pay attention to. So, Norgrimlings Ironbreakers moving out. Looks like there's going to be some War Dancers coming in. They're going to have an extremely bad time as the Dwarvish blasting charges just absolutely wreck them. And we do see those Wood Elves getting their bread buttered pretty good. And on top of that, Norgrimlings Ironbreakers use the rest of their blasting charges to punish the Way Watchers here, and are now going to be able to solo both these units. I love that elite units are like better in the meta now. They have a place. Sure, they're not ubiquitous, and they often can get wrecked. But I really like the direction that CA has gone with progressively making Vortex spells more of an investment. Yes, they can do very well, but it's not just like an auto take that just auto deletes infantry for like 10 wins of magic now. It's like 18, it's 20. It's a little bit more substantial. But the Dwarves are going to be Helm's Deeping on Objective 3. It looks like Platy actually able to wrestle control of a couple other objectives. Very well played, but I think it might be a little too late. This middle objective being held onto by the Dwarves just barely. The Thane looks like he's holding it down, providing his capture weight, and a couple Dwarf Warriors trying to. But good luck wrestling the side objective from the Dowie. You see Thoric Ironbrow moving over there, miners with blasting charges. Norgamling's Ironbreakers need to make sure to make their way back to the point to provide that capture weight, but they might not even need to. We'll have to see. In the tree line, we do get the big Sisters of Twilight. What are they battling right now? Dwarf Warriors, but these are Dwarf Warriors with the Rune of Doom. Rocking some big 46 melee attack, rocking those sweet, sweet elite infantry stats. And Thoric Ironbrow is going to be moving in there and dropping the hammer. Look at the Hammer of Justice coming for the Sisters of Twilight here in the trees. I would imagine Conjoined Destiny will be proccing right now, but it's going to be too little too late. So there's Conjoined Destiny. The heals are up, and Norgamling's Ironbreakers are holding back the advancing Wood Elves, as we do see the Miners with Blasting Charges moving up. Dwarf Warriors moving up as well. And are the Dwarves threatening any other points? Not really, but that cannon fire is quite good. Nailing those War Dancers, Dwarf Cannons are pretty damn solid. Sisters do get broken, but the Destiny is going to heal them, and they'll probably rally and come back. But, you know, the Wood Elves only have 25 seconds to get this objective, and there is no way in the Halls of Grungni that this is going to go down. Miners with Blasting Charges moving in, more and more infantry on the way, and the Dwarves are just simply going to outgrind this. And man, oh man, what a great game. PENTA Irondrake, and they actually did pretty well. I mean, considering how hard they got focused in the beginning, those Irondrakes did super solid, and man, Platy was actually reasonably close to coming back there. Really, really tight game. So, looking at the Irondrakes, let's see the value on these bad boys. That's what we're here for, isn't it? 400, 600, yeah, no, I guess they had their moments. Not like a ton of outright value, but you saw them break infantry units. You have to take into account the leadership discouraging element, which can help break infantry units off points, and they got focus fired super hard, but it was awesome to see it. And the rest of the Dwarf army, of course, did its job. My favorite thing, I think, in the Dwarf build, though, was just the Chad Norgamling's Ironbreakers coming into the fourth quarter and just grinding it out on that last point. And the cannon at 1500 value, shooting at mostly infantry, was pretty cost effective, so... Platy's army was cool as well, and again, you know, the bigger the map, I think the better this matchup gets for the Wood Elves. The smaller, the better it is for the Dwarves, even though I think it's winnable for both sides for sure. I wonder, like, what a full rush would look like here. Probably bad, like, against the PENTA Irondrake, like, but I don't think PENTA Irondrake is meta. Hlydden was going for a bounty on Total Tavern, but it happened to be actually decent in this matchup, so he does get it. So if you guys want to see his avatar, I made him one. You can go to Total Tavern, search him up in the leaderboard. It's this, is it, what was it? It's like a firefighter with a dwarf face on it. It's pretty great. All right, take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time. Well played to both Hlydden and Platypus, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be it for tonight.